All right, so the Colorado Avalanche lose a tough one to the Toronto Maple Leafs over the weekend. We'll discuss that game. And Olofson gets waived. What to do next and what could be the deeper meaning of all of that. And we'll take a look at the week ahead for the Avalanche. Got to right this ship as quickly as possible. Could this be the week that they do it? New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure you're tuned into our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and definitely subscribe to our subtext. Link to that is in the show notes below. And when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, get your opinions and everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very wonderful podcast, sir. All right. It's my turn to get the cold sickness, Kyle. So yeah, you spread it through the interwebs, and now it's hitting me. I really hope it's not worse than what it is right now, which is manageable. This is manageable. So
is that what they call a computer virus?
It could be. Oh, knee slapper. All right, everyone. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's our rundown. But like we said in the opening, we'll discuss the games for this week. Frederick Olofson gets waived. Has not been sent down yet that I know of. But what could that mean? But we are obviously going to start with the most recent game in the Avalanche, and that is that loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs, 4-3. Tough one to swallow there, Kyle. I thought it was a very well played game on both sides. You just have two good teams in the grand scheme of things. The way the Avalanche have been playing recently has been a struggle, but Toronto is one of the hottest teams in the league, and you fought with them, and you really had them on the ropes. You were up 2-0 in this game, and then just kind of, those mistakes crept back in that a team with Toronto and how they're playing is going to exploit those mistakes. And they did with that less than 4 minutes to go power play that they converted on. And there's your game.
And what you're mentioning, it's one of those that with all Avalanche losses so far, it's one of those that whatever camp you sit in when it comes to what you view this Colorado Avalanche team as, you're correct. If the Avalanche were up 2-0, awesome. They scored on the power play, awesome. It was a 47% output on the faceoff dot, not bad. Congratulations.
Positive. Right.
Mikko Rantanen scored a goal, awesome. Nathan MacKinnon, 3-point night, great. You still lost the game. Why? Defensive breakdowns played a part. Is it Georgiev? No, let's not say it, because he had a pretty good game. Yes, he allowed 4 goals. That's Georgiev. It's the nickname. But yeah, let's not solely his fault. Defensive breakdowns played a part. The Avalanche played a great game, good game. They allowed Toronto to come back. Yes, they let them wear those Justin Bieber jerseys in Ball Arena. Have no idea why. That didn't make sense to me. But hey, it's the world we live in. Right. But coming away from this game, it's not, I should be more upset. I've been more upset. I'm not upset. I'm looking ahead, and that makes me upset. But you would like to see, I mean, they did everything we asked of them to do. Nathan MacKinnon's keeping that home streak going. Mikko Rantanen's back on the board. Like, the team looked good. Lehkonen on the power play. That was a nice little touch. But, like, what more needs to happen? Is it the defense is the problem? Possibly, but it's frustrating.
Well, it's you get some questionable moves, but well, I'll get to that in a second. First, like right now, it's taking the tone of. I always compare it to like the New England Patriots, right? And I've said this before on this episode, like the Tom Brady 20 years in New England, they always just seem to come out on top. Didn't like if you made this the smallest mistake and you gave them a sliver of hope to get back in the game and win it, they did. And I'm not saying that that's the the Colorado Avalanche are the version of that, but there have been times where like we've rode that wave of the Avs just seem to come out on top. Like they'll make a mistake here and there in a game. That's hockey. Every team makes a mistake, but it wouldn't sink them. And the mistakes are sinking them now. And they are not that New England Patriots team that just happens to come out on top, no matter how well that or poorly that they're playing. They just figure it out and they have more goals at the end of the game. That's the script, at least for the month of February, has been flipped. And anytime they make a mistake, I'm sitting there watching this thinking, God, I hope that doesn't sink them. And more often than not, it is. And you mentioned, the whole Forgiev thing. No, I'm not playing that game for this one anyway, because what is Bowen Byram doing? And Byram's been playing well.
Yeah.
But he's been playing, he's kind of turned a little bit of a corner, but that play, like you don't need two defenders going down on their belly to try to block a pass. I didn't have a problem with Sam Girard. He kind of does that. But what is the mindset for Bo Byram to be straight on a line with his goalie and him sliding like he's sliding into second base head first into the goalie, which completely takes Georgiev out of the play? It's stuff like that where you're just like, oh man, can we recover from that? They didn't. So that's where I'm at right now with this Avalanche team. Is the mistakes are crushing them, and they don't feel like I don't feel like they can overcome them. In the past, it's been we screwed up here, but we got enough talent. Our defense is good. Go like all of the working parts are just fine, and we had a little mix up. We'll get back to our game and no problem. Now, at least for February, total opposite.
And you mentioned Bowen Byram's his gaff. It was head scratching to say the least. But then the game winner Sam Girard, what were you doing, bud? Like, you got beat twice and you're facing the goalie as that puck is going in. And we haven't mentioned it yet. I'm going to mention it now. The most egregious thing the Colorado Avalanche have done, other than signing a Minnesota Wild legend, Zach Parise, to this roster, they gave a gift to a Bertuzzi on his birthday and gave him a hat trick in Ball Arena. That is just a sin. And it's terrible. And walking away from this, yes, you can clean things up. Like, if you want to complain about your gift, fine. Me as well. I'm not listening to it, and I've been one of his biggest detractors. It only makes it louder with what you've been seeing out of Eustace. And my goodness, Prosvetov, will have yourself a year.
Jeez, what is
he's
going
an
on?
AHL goalie, I guess.
Unreal, yeah.
But it's the goalie thing. It honestly does not play a part in this game. It was a defensive game, and when you make a mistake, teams are geared up. Like, they know if you beat the Avalanche, you're going to be making noise. And the Toronto Maple Leafs, like, this is their 7th in a row. They're cooking. They're really making waves right now. And Colorado is kind of stagnant. Like, they're sitting 3rd in the Central. And they need to get things together. And they got Winnipeg ahead of them and Dallas sitting at the top. Like, Winnipeg, you've been hearing about the ticket thing in Winnipeg. Like, Winnipeg's a weird thing right now. And for them to be behind Winnipeg, this team needs to just a little bit more of a spark would be nice going, especially into this week. The Avs need to step it up, because guess what? All this stuff about they need to clean this up, they need to address this. Look around you. We're about to be done with February. We're running out of runway on getting this season cleaned up and fixed and addressed, because playoffs are right around the corner. We're coming to the trade deadline. Like, it's business time.
Yeah. Now I got Flight of the Conchords in my head. Thank you for that. I thought, we started this by saying, like, we're not like, you're upset over the loss. And I said before, like, I get upset when they lose to teams like this, because those are the top of the line teams. I want to beat those teams. And if the Avs have been playing well for the month of February and you played like this all month, the month would have been completely different. And you just ended up on the wrong side of it. Like you're going to end up on the wrong side of games every once in a while like this, and you play well. And there was so many close opportunities. That Ross Colton play that was right there. I mean, he celebrated. He thought it was in. It's stuff like that that's you needed to get, or you wanted to get just that third goal. If you could just get that third goal, and then that just maybe demoralizes Toronto a little bit. I mean, they're playing so well, they're not going to just get completely down on themselves and phone it in. But man, you're playing in the other team's barn. They're humming. That just puts like, okay, they might press a little bit more and give up a fourth goal. You don't know.
Yeah.
But that one right there was just when we were like, oh, again, when that happened, I'm like, is that one going to come back to bite us? Yup, it did. It's just that's where it's at right now for the Avalanche. But from the overall, like how they played standpoint, I thought they played a very good game against a very good team. So is that, how many times we said this, Kyle? Take that forward. Can they take that forward? We'll see. Last thoughts on that. Go ahead.
I just don't want the Avalanche to be a good, not great team. Looking top to bottom on this team, team can be a great team. And Mikko, yes, he scored, but also a delay of game that also derails what you're doing. Like, you can be a great team. Don't just settle for good, because third in the Central is a good team. They have the potential to be a great team, and they have the chance to prove that later on this week.
Yeah. All right. Roster moves made, and that's Freddie Olofson, who's been with the team for the majority of the season. He got waived, but he cleared. So let's discuss that. We'll do that coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by Camino Consulting, and you've heard our online families and couples course and taken advantage of the Locked On 25% discount running to the end of the month. But what about the live seminars in both sport and business? The challenge in differentiating candidates, and recruits is an endless battle. Everyone can demonstrate their measurables and qualifications, but we all know it is the intangibles that matter when those things are similar. Contact Camino Consulting for their team and management seminars to get a peek behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz style, and watch your next recruiting class or hiring group become one of the most effective you've ever seen, both because you identified the right candidates and because you've learned how to communicate and motivate them in accord with their own preferences. But you aren't in business management or working with a team. We pay referrals. Make some money making your workplace and favorite teams better. Every group works together better at the end of the year, at the end of year one than week one. So contact Camino Consulting at caminoconsulting.ca and get on the fast track to understanding. All right. So, Avalanche did make a move, and kind of a surprising one, if you ask me. Frederick Olofson, who made this team on a tryout and has been there for majority of the games. I think he's only missed a couple games. They put him on waivers. And I say it's surprising, not because he's like, tearing the league up or anything like that, but for what they've been asking him to do this season, I think he's pretty much been there for that. And he's kind of been a little bit of a constant in the bottom lines, and they waived him. We'll get into what they've said about it and kind of reasons why, but this one was a little bit of a surprise to me. About for you?
It was interesting, and of course, the first thing I want to do is do a Nichushkin check and see what's going on there. And and then then you look and you see, Cogliano's returning. Like things are it. I started to worry, and I started to sit there and just wait for this next move. Like, is this going to be Nichushkin, or is this going to be is there a move coming down? Because the last couple games, scouts have been everywhere. I mean, we're getting closer to that trade deadline. Something's amiss, something's afoot at all times. So you never know what the Avalanche are doing. So You don't know if a move's coming, if Nichushkin's coming back. So I was confused, but when he cleared, nothing happened. Everybody just relax. It's going to be fine. But
Yeah.
again, it's one of those, what is going on with this team and what are they planning? It's the big question around the team, because still nothing has come of the Tomas Tatar trade. Like that piece that they got for Tomas Tatar. Like why did he have to be moved in the first place? Why did they need that pick
Just seemed
for
like
the
that happened
future?
so quickly.
It did.
So quickly.
They just gave up on that so quickly. And then to bring in Parise so quickly and hold on to Raijo for as long as they have, it felt like there were some moves that were getting ready to happen that never happened. And it's very confusing. And at the end of the year, looking back, it's all going to make sense, hopefully. But as of right now, there are a lot of loose ends that just don't make a lot of sense on this team.
So they said, they obviously were hoping that he cleared, and he did, because if he does, then that gives them like flexibility and options, basically. And they have not. It's not one of those things where he cleared and then they immediately sent him down, and they don't have to right now because he's been on, because he went through waivers. He doesn't have to go on waivers again for another 30 days. So they can move him down if they want and not have to put him on waivers for another month. So yeah, it does beg the question. Okay, so who is maybe around the bend? Maybe is that Val? I'm going off of the whole Sammy Gerard. When he came back from the players program, we knew about it. We heard that he was in the building. Remember, he was back for practice, and then he practiced for, it was like a week before he actually came back. So I think there's going to be, you're going to see that similar protocol for Nichushkin. So and we haven't seen him back at practice yet. That could happen tomorrow. We have no clue. It could happen tomorrow. So yeah, he's a question. They did say, with Chris Wagner coming up, they're happy with how he's playing, and it's like right now, it's like, okay, like is Chris Wagner any better or worse than Fredrik Olofson? I don't know. Like, I'm not saying Olofson's not a guy that you're leaning on, and I think Wagner was hurt earlier, so I think he might have come up earlier if not for that. So maybe they just are happy with what he's given you so far. And the other one, which is interesting, and I keep and I gotta Evan Raw, I gotta give him credit for it, because I keep, like, I don't have Kovalenko in the back of my or in the front of my mind.
I do.
And I should more than I do.
Yeah.
I know, since the beginning of the year, it was, if he's coming to the Avalanche, it's going to be in March, beginning to mid-March. And that's obviously close. That could be another thing here as to why they did it now, because he should be here within these next 30 days. So if you want to put him in right away, you got to find a spot for him immediately. And you would think he'd be on, a bottom six pairing to start anyway. We've seen Bednar do crazier things than bring in brand new people and put them right on the second line. That could be another reason why they're doing this now, so to have that 30-day flexibility. Could be Nichushkin coming back, could be Kovalenko coming in. Take your pick, really, right now.
And see, I am of that same mindset of where I have on my wall next to my bed before I go to sleep every day, days until Kovalenko arrives. I scratch it into the wall. And that did cross my mind with this Olofson move, but then why now? Why not after the Dallas game? Why not after the Chicago game? What are you doing today, tomorrow, yesterday, the day before? Why are you making this move through waivers? Why are you playing the waiver game right now? What are you accomplishing that you cannot wait a little bit longer? Because if Val's still not ready, if he's still practicing, because that was a thing with Sammy G when he came back. It was like you were right. It's about a week of practice, and then yes, he's making the roster when they come back home.
Right.
Cool. So Why now? What are they?
I don't know.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like at time of recording, still nothing's happening, and nothing happened the day before. So what was the purpose of this move? To make sure the waiver system worked?
No, like I think it's just to like I said, so you have the flexibility for the month of March, but we're not in March yet.
Exactly.
So if that's when you wanted to do it, then you could have just waited like another
March
week
1st.
to do it.
There's 31 days in
Right.
March.
Right.
Like what?
And
28 February.
It's not a bad if that was your decision process with this guy in particular, it's not a bad idea to do it. But maybe I would have waited just another week, because I don't think anybody's going to go picking up anybody on waivers right now, because everybody's in trade mode. But then again, it only takes one team to be like, oh, what we're looking for in a trade, we could just go get off the waiver wire. We could just go get him. So that's the risk you run. And that's the risk reward with anybody you put up on waivers. But he cleared, and he could play against Dallas if they want to. If not, they can move him down and move him up. But I mean, we're talking about a week here for me. So is it that big of a deal? Maybe not. It was just a head scratcher of who the player is, because he's been a constant for you in terms of being on the ice. And you have guys like Kiviranta, who's doing really not much at all. No. So I don't know. Interesting. Hang on.
Yeah, I don't understand why they're holding on to Chris Wagner to this regard, because he's getting McDermott minutes, and both are sub 10 minutes. So I don't understand why that is position we're holding in reverence. But
yeah,
I don't run this team.
Yeah, it was just an interesting move. So we'll see. Again, I like what I'm the same mind of you as like, we'll look back at the end of the year and say, did that make sense? Right now, it's a little bit like a head scratcher, kind of, somewhat semi head scratcher. But at the end of the year, if we can say like, okay, this is the whole reason why they did it in mass, like, okay, then we'll say that at the end of the year. All right, let's talk about this week of games for the Avalanche, and 3 of them coming up, and we head into March. Big month, big games. Let's talk about them. First, we're going to hear from Sleeper, and regardless of where you are in the current standings, we want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy Sleeper hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. And Kyle, once again, is scouring that internet trying to find a better app for daily fantasy hockey. Have you found one yet, sir?
No, not even
close. Still looking. So, with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. And this is where I ask you, sir, who are you picking as your daily fantasy sleeper for the Avalanche in their next game at Dallas?
Arturi Lehkonen.
You're going Lehkonen again. This worked out for you last time you picked Lehkonen. 4-point game. You're doing it again.
Yeah, he's rolling on the power play, and I think Dallas is going to neutralize everything on Colorado. So Dallas will forget about Arturi Lehkonen, bank on him.
Love it. So all you have to do is pick whether studs like Arturi Lehkonen will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. And you can use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That code again is LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. All right, so the Avs with 3 games this week, and we figured to start the week off, why not talk about those games? We'll get into the more detail of them leading the day of those games and kind of like previewing those games. But as far as the Avs games this week, they are playing Tuesday, which just happens to be a certain host's birthday, at home against Dallas, and then a day off, and then they are in Chicago, and then a day off, and they are in Nashville. So for this week, you got the 1 home game in Dallas, and then 2 away games, Chicago and Nashville. Obviously, the Dallas one is the one that everybody has circled For Nashville, that's a big game for them because that's who's behind you in the standings. Yeah, they're what 11 points out right now.
Yep.
But obviously that closes the gap for them if they can be. So that's going to be a big game for them. Not saying it's not a big game for the Avalanche. It would be. But obviously the Dallas one is a big one. What do you think for this week for the Avs?
No, this is a big week. And honestly, grand scheme of things, this might be one of the deciding factors in the season of the Colorado Avalanche because this is Central Division week. This is third jersey week. This is Central. This is get it done week. Dallas, you can beat them. You've done it before. This is a beatable team. Yes, they look really, really good right now, but you can do it. This is a game you can do it and get some forward momentum against Chicago and especially Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about standings and you're saying like Dallas, yeah, they look good. They're a good team. They're a solid team. And where the Avalanche have been for the month of February is obviously not good. Teams go through this, and I know right now in Avs Nation, it's a lot of doom and gloom, and I want to say like I get it, but I also like don't like let them come out of it because they're too good for this to continue. Just like the losing, the inconsistencies, certain parts of like the inconsistency with the goaltending and stuff like that's been the year-long problem. But with not being able to win games, I still just feel like this team is too good for that. But you look at okay, look at Vancouver. Vancouver is the top team in the league. Their last 10, they're 4-5-1, and they lost 4 in a row. They just finally won a game. The Golden Knights, remember the start the Golden Knights had to the season? Their last 10, they're 4-5-1. They've lost 3 in a row. Edmonton, that what was it, 16, 17 game winning streak that they had? They've lost 3 in a row and are 4-5-1 in their last 10. This happens. It happens. You never want it to happen in your team, but it happens. So we are at the end of February. You have 2 more games left in February, and then that Nashville game is the first game of March. March is where you want to start playing like you were heading into the All-Star break. How the Avs were playing heading into that All-Star break, if you can transport that into March, you are feeling good. You're not playing your best hockey right now, but that's, that I don't want to say that that's okay and be like, oh, we're fine with it. If you were playing this way now in March and in the beginning of April, you got cause for concern heading into the playoffs. You have time to correct this. And this is the week to, like you said, three division games. It's the perfect time to set a tone for what the rest of the year could be.
And honestly, if the Avalanche would have returned to form, how they went into the All-Star break and came out of the All-Star break in the exact same way, it would not be as doom and gloom as we're talking about this week.
Right.
But you're putting the extra pressure on yourself for this division week. Like these are crucial points. This can affect a lot of things, not just your place in the standings, but how teams portray themselves going into this trade deadline. Teams that didn't think they had an issue, you go through this week, you beat the Colorado Avalanche, you might say, hey, I need one more piece or one more. This might change how the Avalanche are going out and making moves and addressing their issues in the trade deadline. You have to, every move, everything that you do this week is going to affect your push to the trade deadline and your push to the playoffs. Because this team right now, if the playoffs started tomorrow, I doubt this team could get out of the first round with how they're playing currently. And if this team can't find their identity and push through these division games, the month of March, we've run out of excuses. We've had so many points of if the Avalanche can figure it out and get it together here and here and here, this is it. Because in March, you've run out of runway. You're going to be fighting to get back in relevance in the Central and playoff positioning. Because whoever you draw right now, I don't know if this Colorado Avalanche team could beat them in a 7-game series.
It would depend on matchups and stuff like that, obviously. But yeah, just from like their play, yeah, you're like, okay, it might be a struggle. It might be a battle. But I like having this Dallas game first to start the week because you're not looking forward to it, over a weekend or something like that. If you can get that win and then you follow that up with obviously Chicago, who's one of the worst teams in the league, you get those 2 for a week. and then you head into Nashville feeling really good. And if you can sweep this week, man, that is really, really where you want to be heading into a brand new month.
Yep.
So let's see how it goes. But you got to start with that first one, and I like that it's Dallas and at home, obviously. So we'll be talking about that obviously a little bit more tomorrow. So tune in for that. But for this one, thank you for making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. And go check us out on our social media outlets as well. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. If I'm not sick and